We have a hot new report out in the Matt Lauer sexual misconduct investigation. It, quote, has found no evidence that NBC News executives or senior management knew of any misconduct by Today Show Matt Lauer prior to complaint in November of inappropriate behavior with a female colleague that led to his firing. Further, they say that the report also determined that there isn't believed to be a systemic culture of inappropriate behavior and sexual harassment at NBC News. And who's behind this hard-hitting report that exonerates pretty much everyone at NBC News of misconduct or negligence? Well, the internal probe was conducted by NBC Universal's general counsel, Kim Harris.
Yay, all right. Great job.
It is such a fantastic, fascinating read to see the way that they say that essentially none of the executives had any lapses in judgment or reasoning. They interviewed 68 current and former NBC News leaders. None of the 4 victims that came out against Matt Lauer at the time reported the incidents to their superiors. But do you think this lets NBC off the hook? What are your thoughts?
Isn't this like obvious to everyone? Of course they were scared to go up and say this powerful guy who makes so much money and brings so much money in is doing this thing. I mean, let's go a little bit before the Me Too movement and maybe even during the movement, which is you have to be a little scared that your job is at stake if you do something like this. And of course, the NBC investigation team found that NBC was innocent.
Yeah.
That's get someone else to do it.
It's so weird that I understand. When you read these things, you just have to read all the apology moments and the damage control statements extra hard to find out what exactly is going on. I understand that maybe it is in the best interest of the general counsel of NBC Universal to launch some kind of investigation, but at the same time, doesn't it seem weird that like it's their personal investigation and they say no one had all these problems? Like, what do you think, Maytha?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Kim. The fact that very vulnerable people who are inferior to Matt Lauer and all these executives, like the idea that they would come forward when there wasn't a culture or climate that encouraged women to come forward, where they would get some sort of response that would honor the fact that they were taking a really big risk talking about their sexual assault. So I'm, again, not surprised that they didn't go report. 2, surprised that they just exonerated, as you said, exonerated themselves out of a whole culture of harassment. They're like, we basically don't do harassment at all.
It just reads like, oh, I have to cover myself in case I get in trouble. I'm scared for myself. They didn't appear to do anything novel at all here.
Yeah, it says a number of individuals interviewed said that Lauer could be flirtatious, would frequently make jokes, some with sexual overtones, and openly engage in sexually oriented banter in the workplace. And so this is in the report.
Right. And they said that he would desist if there was lack of interest or follow-up. And so, like, clearly he didn't do anything. And so what was hilarious about this to me is that I've taken human resources training as just a TA at University of Southern California, and you go through this like simulated whole computer-generated training. And that clearly is something we're not allowed to engage in, which is sexual jokes or sexual insinuations at all. And then the other thing which was interesting is that they said that they went through Matt Lauer's text messages, and then they added this little sentence that, well, we do admit that he could have erased some things after the fact, too. So, again, I don't think this is a thorough investigation, clearly because it comes from the inside, and 2, because then what would they do if they did find something? What would have been the, like, collective response?
Right, there's all these weird details. Like they said that the way it had been set up is that the offices of the HR representatives are in the bullpen, essentially.
Oh, that's
in the
terrible.
area. They're glass-walled offices. So if you go in and talk to HR, first of all, it's HR. It had been HR within NBC News. Everyone sees you go in and sit down.
Right.
And then you know that that's the case, and you know that there's got to be some. I mean, anyone who works in the office knows that there's gossip around the office. You know that's getting out immediately, and there's this fear that if you say anything, they're going to look at you, and then they're going to look at Matt Lauer, who you've already been in meetings with, where he says, "That's a nice shirt, sexy, sexy." and then you have to ignore him? Like what? That's the kind of advice that Cesar Millan gives about bad behaviors from dogs. Like what? That's how you treat children.
He's not a dog.
He
is responsible for his own actions.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, none of these women did this impossible setup we put up for them, this circuitous obstacle course of possibly getting fired or ostracized by the office. And then there's this, I mean, the phrase, there's no evidence that anyone knew. That's a funny phrase because, you know, I'm sure people talked around the office or maybe someone maybe another executive mentioned something they heard to another executive. I highly doubt this is completely a new concept to them altogether.
Yeah, they said there will be some changes, however, so those are positive developments out of this that I can tell you. They said that there's going to be a new team of employee counselors who operate separately from the NBC News bullpen that are working with like the NBC Universal family, who ostensibly would benefit from knowing this kind of stuff ahead of time, especially since we have all done a very good job of raising awareness through the Me Too movement that this stuff does not fly. People as big as Matt Lauer, when they do things like this, can fall, and they're trying to do it in the future. So the NBC Universal's legal team will provide better confidentiality, according to this report. They say also more attention will be paid to workplace behavior and the environment inside the unit, as well as more training sessions. Do those training sessions work?
I just like tap, tap, tap. I mean, I remember them clearly. I remember the content around it, and I remember the very strange animation that they had as part of it.
But what was the animation? Like cartoon sexual harassers?
Yeah, cartoon sexual harassment, just simulations of would you tag this as a sexual harassment violation? Like,
right? Is this bad?
Right? Is this an incidence of sexual harassment? Is this okay? I mean, for me, it was kind of obvious stuff. Being a woman, what flies and doesn't fly. But they did make things very explicit in terms of the lines between you and students and other staff members at the university. So, yeah, I don't know how this flies.
All right. Well, Matt Lauer still is not working at NBC right now, so there's that also. No developments in that area, and I think that's a good thing.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.